Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to get going with our first Beer with the Boss. This is a Twitter space that we're recording. We're going to put it up later on Anchor.fm as a bit of a kind of podcast channel in which, yeah, we're just going to uh, upload these talks that we usually have in-house. We usually have at the company, and yeah, our boss is a cool guy, but he's pretty busy. So we have to kind of get you on these calls, and we have the excuse that we're going to open up a beer and talk about a few cool things that interest us. So before we get into any questions, Joel, I have to ask you, what beer are you drinking today?
Oh, so hello guys, hello everyone. So yeah, the idea here is we're gonna have these talks, and the beer that I am having today is to commemorate your country. So as always, you know that I am Guinness lover, so I'm drinking a Guinness for you.
Nice, nice. Yeah, yeah. I wish I could have my hands on Guinness a little bit more often, but I guess I'm commemorating your country because I'm drinking a beer. It's not that kind of hipstery or anything. It's all over the place here in Brazil. It's called Spaten. It's quite new. I think it's under the umbrella of Ambev, which is the big beer producer here in Brazil. But it's a nice lager. So yeah, I'm gonna open this up. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, there's Guinness things, right? And you actually provided me a bunch of Guinness, right? Remember last birthday you sent me like as a bunch of boxes of Guinness, so we still have some, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. We did send a good shipment of Guinness to your house, but yeah, it was your birthday, and you do deserve it. So very happy to send it.
Thank you. And how you try like did you try several beers in Brazil since you moved there?
Yeah, I mean the Brazilian beers, especially down here in the south of Brazil where I live, is incredible. The level of craft beers and even kind of like small breweries that have popped up over the last few years. They're not that small anymore. Like there's a brewery called Eisenbahn, which is huge now. It started in Blumenau. There's this other beer from another city in Santa Catarina called Joinville. That's the name of the city, but the name of the beer is called Opa. And wow, it's really, really good. The IPA is really good. But yeah, to be honest, in these next few conversations that we have over the next few weeks and months, I'm gonna try and get my hands on some more niche Brazilian beers. So yeah, we can get more people drinking them.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right.
So
So let's talk about tech today.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the first thing that I kind of want to talk about is the fact that you're the boss, and this is Beer with the Boss. Even though this time you're talking with me, I'll be talking with you more times on these calls, but we're more than likely going to have other employees from Webera talking to you and coming to you with their questions. So, since you're going to be doing a lot of talking, and we care about where you come from and stuff, could you give us a little bit of a history of like your journey through tech and what brought you to the point where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I mean, that's more like a joke, be the boss, because I don't behave like a boss, like a bossy boss, let's say.
Sure.
So my idea is always like you guys, you are the creative mind in the company. But so my if we go way back in technology, which we don't want it to say because with our age, not have any problems with age. But like I started maybe with like 9 years or something like that, which is too far. And I would just tell one thing what I learned like DOS and things before the internet. So that doesn't matter anymore. But going forward a few years, like maybe 5, 6 years, I was kind of mad with Windows at the time, Windows 95 or something like that. So that was 1996 or something like that. Then I found in Brazil, we used to have those magazines like with CDs inside. And there was this random magazine with a CD from like a strange OS with a strange company called Red Hat. I was the Red Hat Linux 5 or 5.1 at the time. They restarted the counting a few years later, but now they went to like enterprise version, and that's where I started to learn at my home PC Linux. But I ended up working in an internet provider at the time where we hosted like at the time 3,000 websites, which was huge. I started to work in a security company, like an information security company called Proteus. I worked there for about 5 years. I worked in several projects, either as a security consultant, like fixing stuff, mostly in Linux, in Unix. So I end up working several companies in Brazil. So we did some pretty good job in security. One of these companies was Nextel. And then I decided to switch from security. I decided to go back to infrastructure. And there was this position on Nextel to work with infrastructure. I started with security there, but was like building the security, the infrastructure of the security team.
Sorry, this was around what year?
This was around 2006 or so. Yeah,
Whoa,
2006.
okay.
And then infrastructure, I did normal like Unix Solaris things, like I was a sysadmin. Then I moved to storage. I think I have a Marcos Benedito, which he was part of this too. So he actually, I know him, Marcos, that's here on the chat since the OE time when the OE was, I don't remember the year, but I was in the data center when OE was launched, the telecom.
So it's safe to say that you two have shared a beer together.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah, and when I moved to Nextel, he was there too. I was like, dude, what are you doing here?
Nice.
We started using solar zones, and that was a huge advantage for our team. So, and then at one point, I helped to build the Nextel data center in Brazil, and they decided to do a globalization project, and they moved me to US. At NII, they had some projects, and they decided to move some projects around because of some difficulties that we were having with some of the vendors that we worked with, that they are not exactly delivering what we want. One of them was related to an email project that was supposed to centralize emails in one of our subsidiaries at the time. And then I proposed to the CIO here, we could do it Google, and Google at the time there were Google apps. They were pretty new. And then we went on an adventure to deploy Google Apps to a 20,000 users company across 5 countries. And that was a problem that we would not be able to do because, like, as a holding, we didn't have our own infrastructure capable of supporting 20,000 users. And there was this other company that was 2011. There was this other company called Amazon AWS, that they have Windows machines that we could rent by the hour. I was like, let's try to do that. We build infrastructure to do the authentication in AWS, and that will be available enough to support the Google. And then we were able to integrate all the Active Directory of the 5 countries under one authentication umbrella on AWS, and move all the users to Google. So that's how I start with cloud, kind of.
So then at what stage did you decide to start what we have here today, which is Webera. This was probably like 5 years ago, I'd say.
So yeah, so about like let's say 2015 or so, the company started to go down, right, in flames, literally.
Mm.
They start to fire people. It's
Nextel,
like,
you
okay,
mean?
Nextel, yeah,
Yeah.
Nextel. And then I was like, okay, I have this new knowledge, right? After managing cloud, and then we started a bunch of other projects, like several parts of the company, like the whole data center of the holding that was here in the Reston Town Center. We moved to the cloud. Then we had these other projects where some country didn't have enough capacity to do a big data project. Then we moved to AWS. So we did several other small projects, like a data top-up project in Brazil wasn't working so well. We can do this very fast here, and then we moved to AWS. So several other small projects and other big ones, we end up doing this. And I was with this team of people working on this, and then I said, okay, I can do that. And as the company was laying off people, I still have like now I know people here in US, right? So it kind of pop up some people, oh, can you help me with this? I said, I can help you with this. And then I start to, okay, I can help. But there's so much of Joel, right? There's not that much of Joel. I can squeeze you. Like, then I have kids, right? I have start to have,
Exactly.
so,
You're a
okay, I have
limited
to have a life.
resource.
Yeah. So I decided, okay, let me like the Trojan. I am the Trojan. And then I start, okay, let's invite people to work with me to solve problems. And then I had a friend in Brazil who was my ex-boss at Nextel in Brazil. And he was looking for something to do. So I was like, let's start a company at the time. It's called Zaltz. You take care of the team in Brazil. I take care of the team. I did the sales here in US. We can do that. And then we started at the time it's called Zaltz. In the end, after 2 years or so, the partnership wasn't work well, but we're still friends, but we decided to go different ways. Because he was growing in Brazil, and I was like, I don't have any expectations to go back to Brazil. So I decided to split. Like, you can continue with South Brazil, and then I started a different business with some of the knowledge and the people that I have here. That's why we have Webera here now. Then I decided to go this with this idea, right? So, but like, what what idea did I have, right? So, when I moved to US, one of the things that motivates me or inspire me, it's how technology here evolves so fast, right? So many things that I wasn't
Yeah.
able to use in Brazil now I can use here, and there is. Although I am not on the Silicon Valley, which is the other side of the country, but there are many companies here in the East Coast which support the government. So there's many, like you see big buildings from Oracle, Microsoft, HP. Everyone has their big foot here. Red Hat and of course Amazon, and the biggest data centers in the world are here, right? I live in a region here in Loudoun County, which has literally hundreds of data centers, probably.
Yeah, like you live literally in US East 1,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's my backyard. So, in here, there's like discussions. Like I started because I wanted to start to sell here and start to know people. I started to go to meetups and all those and new people here, like in different areas, and everybody related with technology and what the projects they were doing. There are many startups here. So I was like, wow, that's exactly what I was thinking about motivation. It's like, okay, and what do I do, right? I wanted to do entrepreneur here. So like I could like start an application or like the Mototalk, that's one of the softwares that we help Motorola to deploy in today here in US, which is part of Webera. I used to support
Yeah.
on AWS as part of my work. So I was like, well, we can do this. We even start like at the time it wasn't called Mototalk, it was called Prep. We even start to think about, oh, let's develop an app. But then like the amount of capital that you require to build an app is significant, and then you face the competition, which is not easy in case of WhatsApp and many others. There was this possibility, but then I was like, okay, what do I know? I was like, I know how to get people from data centers to the cloud. So that's something that I can
It's
definitely
very
do.
valuable, yeah.
Right. So, and then there was many people doing that, right, at the time. Okay, so let's start with that. So we did the one client, we did okay, but then we have another client to do, then we have to do everything manually. Oh, let's automate these things, because now when I built a data center back in 2009 in Brazil, we have to wire everything. So when you are in the cloud, you don't have to stack anything, you don't have to buy servers, you don't have to do capacity planning, you don't have to do many of the things that you have to do in an old data center. But and even after that, you don't have to do this every time that you build it. So you can write scripts, and we used to write many scripts with CloudFormation, with Bash scripts, Python code, that to help us to do the things that we didn't we want to do many times. So in that way, we start Webera with this idea that we can help like people like to do their apps and their innovation faster than we thought they were possible before.
Nice. And yeah, and that was around 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was 5 years ago. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And yeah, I'm really happy you did because yeah, there's around 30 of us now, and yeah, we get to do a lot of really fun work.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that fun too. There's a lot of stuff that, of course, like any job, you have to get through, and people that you have to deal with. But in general, the cloud projects that we get to work with are very fun and very yeah, we definitely bring a lot of value to the customers, and maybe I'm being a little bit biased, but yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah, but that's life, right? If was like every day the same, it's like heartbeat, right? If it's not going up and down, you're dead, right? So we have to go up and down. So
That's right.
otherwise, so it's value. But like the important thing is this, like, is build a great team that can deliver things even through some difficult times and difficult issues, right? Solve this. And then in the end, if we solve, that's awesome. And we can see the value. We can see that we didn't make like we did something, right? So we solved that problem. It was difficult, and then we can, at the end of the day, not be dead, right? We are doing something.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that team, we have a really good one. Work with some really cool engineers and project managers, and yeah, just people of all sorts at Webera. So maybe like in the next few weeks, we'll also have the chance to meet a few people and to have more conversations with them too. But yeah, I was thinking that like the majority of these sessions that we have with you, I'd like to at least like focus on one kind of like meat on the bone issue, kind of like a juicy question that I have on my mind that I want to bring to him. And the one for this week, um, I'll start it off like this. To be honest, I don't think it's the best premise, but so this is my question. I'll just go for it. Imagine that you like have a teenage son or daughter, and they come to you and they say, "Dad, I'm gonna go into tech. I want your advice. I know you've been working in the tech industry for a long time. I'm only going to focus on infrastructure as code or Kubernetes. And at least for the next 2 years, that's going to be my focus. I'm going to become really good at that. And and I need your advice to tell me which one to choose." And I admit that it's a weird premise because I mean, really, what's behind my question is not so much a teenage daughter or teenage son, but more like a company. Imagine a company that is not very good at either of those two things. They don't have infrastructure as code in place and they don't work with Kubernetes clusters. What do you think, I suppose, at the end of the day, is technology or the kind of like the way of working, be it infrastructure as code or Kubernetes, that would benefit them the most, the quickest? Because I know like the answer at the end of the day is a combination of two, right? You want infrastructure as code,
Yeah.
and maybe in many cases you want Kubernetes. But what would be what you would recommend to start with?
So that's there is a sad story about Kubernetes, which is if you don't use infrastructure as code, you're not using Kubernetes. Because in many of the things that are in Kubernetes, they have to be automated, right? There is no way to do all the Kubernetes without automation, without infrastructure as code. So you have to focus on do infrastructure as code, and then you can use Kubernetes. Kubernetes itself is not, it does not, like, if you wanted to do Kubernetes manually, you're not doing Kubernetes, you're doing something else. You're doing, I don't know what you're doing, but it's kind of mandatory to do to do Kubernetes. You have to do automate. That's the whole idea behind Kubernetes. You have to declare what is your infrastructure. Even it's called immutable infrastructure. It doesn't change infrastructure. It's like you declare infrastructure using code, and then you describe this to the machine, to the Kubernetes, and Kubernetes will deploy it for you. So there's not really benefit on manually installing a deployment or ingress or anything on Kubernetes if you don't do as code. I would recommend start with infrastructure as code, and then you see that naturally you're going to deploy a Kubernetes cluster, you're going to deploy your application, everything. Then you have the benefit. Kubernetes is a orchestration framework or orchestration product. It orchestrates the deployment of Docker and other technologies around containers. So that will be my answer or my recommendation to my kid or for any company. Does that help you?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, imagine if, because there are ways, right? There are ways to implement Kubernetes without doing infrastructure as code yourself, right? So I'm just thinking, like, what comes to mind is like an offering, like Google's autopilot, right? Like you literally just put the name of the cluster that you want. I think you kind of tell them how many nodes you want, and it just provisions it. And of course, you're not the one that's configuring the infrastructure as code, but yeah, you're just passing on that job to somebody else. So it's really
But
kind of like fun.
you can't get any value of a Kubernetes cluster if you don't know how to use it. Like you if you don't deploy anything, it's like those have Raspberry Pis that I have on my drawer here. They do
Yeah,
nothing. Like they don't do anything by themselves. Like I have to get some value. And the only way to get some value from a Kubernetes cluster is that if I deploy something there, if I see an application running. Uh, and to deploy anything in a Kubernetes cluster, I have to write an YAML file, or I can do manually, but that's like still I have to do some shell scripts or something like that. So I have to at least understand that to change the behavior of that cluster, I had to write some code. So it's not like I'm trying to push the barrier from like Terraform is not the only infrastructure as code that we have, right? There is
true.
they're not event like this. Like there's CloudFormation, there's AWS CDK, uh, there is Pulumi, there are many tools out there that you can
Yeah,
classify
and
as infrastructure as
And
code. So
I'm just wondering, would you even classify? So, say for example, there's a lot of I know Helm isn't traditionally thought of as infrastructure as code, but many times, you, of course, you don't want to manually install an Nginx ingress controller, right? because there are ways of doing, there's like degrees of infrastructure as code, right? Because when I posed the question, I was thinking of like a situation in which you have infrastructure as code really well thought out, really well implemented. The tagging strategy kind of catches everything. Everyone uses source control in a really efficient way to make sure that the desired state always matches the source of truth. Because we've also seen, right, that there are companies that do have Kubernetes environments, and they have kind of some parts of the Kubernetes add-ons that are kind of considered infrastructure as code. Some parts are very manual. Some parts are dedicated to Helm charts. So yeah, I'm guessing. I think maybe the better question is, what would be kind of like more dangerous, like to have a badly implemented infrastructure as code strategy, or to have a badly implemented Kubernetes cluster?
I guess
I think they're both bad.
it's a hard thing, right? So like there was this post that I did on LinkedIn a few months ago, or a year maybe ago, that was like don't use graphical tools to create Terraform code. It's like, why would you do that, right? There's like, if you want to use mouse, go to the AWS console, to the Google console. They are awesome. You can't believe how many things you can do with that thing. Because like we took like literally, there's like hundreds of years to get to a point where we can deploy an infrastructure or a hardware kind of thing with bits, right? So you get some bits and you write some code and then you get them deployed, right? Which is, I think, is awesome. So we get to the point where we have a way to describe the infrastructure, not in an imperative way, with Terraform, with Helm, with Kubernetes, where with the manifests, we describe how our application should behave, how much CPU we should use, how much memory. It's just a description, it's like unbelievable. And then someone gets, and you could do that 20 years ago with a mouse with a VMware. That's the same thing. You could like get a machine, get a VMware, do or the AWS console, either way. And you have to do every single time that you're doing that thing. So you do it again, 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 again with the mouse. And you have like hundreds of administrators, system administrators to do that. It's like install a printer. You go there and you install a printer, you have installed your printer, you go there and do again, everything again, install the driver, and whether remove the other one. And then we have these tools that they can do everything automatically to us. Like we just write once and run everywhere, like a Java thing, right? That was a Java mod. And now we can't. We have these new tools that are like writing codes. It was like, okay, you can use as a template, but if you don't understand what the tools are doing, if you don't understand that code, it loses the idea of infrastructure as code. If you're not storing in a Git, it's not infrastructure code. If you're not versioning that code, right? If the infrastructure cannot accept changes, like if your changes are not in the code, not in the repository, if you're not using some kind of tool like GitOps, like you mentioned before, or if you have some way around that's not like going to the console, do the change, that is not good. It's like you lost control, right? In the past we have this what's called change board meetings, where people were like hours and hours discussing a change before going to production, and then what we were discussing is just like an item, because whatever was going to, you never know what was discussed and what really was going to production, because wasn't tracked. There was no really way to track. Now, if everything goes through the code, you can really track what was changed, right? So, and then you can, before it happens, not after, right? So, because you say, okay, this code is deploying this code. Okay, I can see this, it will happen. you can do this like, oh, I went to the console and saw the logs, but that's too late. Like it didn't happen. Like
Exactly.
someone clicked on the mouse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I must admit, I feel quite kind of lucky, right? Because like I've been in the tech industry for maybe just over 2 years. I used to be a high school teacher before this, so I kind of like arrived to the party when these conversations had already happened. I mean, declaring your not only your source code through code, but actually the infrastructure as code was a given now. Like everyone, no one has to be convinced of just how much better it is to declare exactly what you want, have it in a source versioning repository, so you can talk to your coworkers and say, "Hey, this is what we want." We don't have to explain the steps which are going to lead to errors. It's just yeah, it's a really, I think for me it's a perfect time to be working now with these technologies, because it's just much better than it was before.
I still think you need to lie to us about your 2 years experience, but that's something that I mean, you know a lot, man, for 2 years. It's not, yeah. So
Well, I mean, I must admit, like these 2 years at Webera so far, they didn't seem like 2 years. They've been yeah. Yeah, I think they count as five at least, especially with some of the on-call outages with some of our clients. But yeah, you live and you learn, and I've been learning a lot. That's for sure. So anyway, I'm done with my beer. I don't have any more questions for you today. I know you're a busy guy, so maybe we can leave it for this week, and I'll have some better questions for you next week. Sound good?
all right. No, thank you, man, so much. Thank you. I really appreciate your work, the work that you do at Webera and all the team at Webera. I see here that we have George, we have Rousseau, Otavio, and thank you guys. And I really appreciate the work that you do and the whole team there and everyone that's joined recently. And I hope we can still keep this team that is pushing innovation everywhere. Thank you
Oh, thanks,
guys.
Bob. I mean, you drink one beer and then you start complimenting all of us.
Come on. Yeah, I hope in July I can drink a lot of beers when we meet in Brazil, all the teams. So and then we can have our 50-year anniversary of the
Oh
business.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
be amazing.
All
Cool, man.
right.
So thanks a million.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you
Thank you, sir.
soon.
Thank you,
Have a
sir.
good day. Bye.
Bye.